What's up, gamers, YouTubers? We're here, Common Sense Grifting, live reacting to another fun idiot contest. Um, I guess if I, yeah, it'll be good. All right, let's begin.
The
We've got let's introduce the characters. Which fighters entered the arena today? We got Alan Dershowitz. He's a very litigious guy, so let me be careful about what I say about him. But he's also like classic American villain, infamous worldwide. Jeffrey Epstein pal, butt buddy probably too. And then Joe Kent, who I'm not as familiar with, but from my understanding, his background is more so as a white nationalist. So we got Jewish supremacist versus white Christian evangelical kind of supremacist. Yeah. It'll be let's see what they have to say about Iran.
potential to introduce you as a Republican, but here we are.
I mean, Joe Kent's gonna be the only one to say anything of value. Alan Dershowitz, even though he's an idiot, Alan Dershowitz is just an Israel first guy. Um, so he's gonna take whatever the Israel Warhawk position is and defend that.
Why do you feel so strongly about this that you have renounced your democratic faith and gone to the other side?
Mom, what's that? Nothing. Just get in the car. Let's go. Come on.
Because of Israel.
Well, the polls show that the vast majority of Democrats of every age oppose Israel. They have elected a congresswoman from New Jersey who is virulently anti-Israel. They may be nominating a Senate candidate from Michigan who campaigns with a neo-Nazi.
He's calling us on a neo-Nazi. Hassan Piker is who he's referencing here. Yeah. Hassan Piker, anti-American, hyper woke neo-Nazi. Yeah.
Who basically is a Hitler supporter, and as you say, even
Who basically is a Hitler. Okay, bro. Dude, I love when like this. He's not even referencing any of the usual attacks. He's just making up his own attacks against Hassan. It's awesome. It's crazy, dude. Like, why don't you just go with anti-Semites, like John Fetty or Dog? No, no one cares about that. Who's actually like a serious person? What are the attacks that work? Why don't you go with like he's anti-American, that kind of thing, or just like a terrorist supporter? Like instead now we're going. He supports Hitler, dude. Yeah, awesome.
Rahm Emanuel has now said that the Democrats should stop and the United States government should reorganize its relationship with Israel and treat it like any other ally. And in light of what's going on university campuses, the uptick of anti-Semitism around the world, I just can't be.
What is going on university campuses? Because I was at a university almost 2 years ago now. I graduate. No, wait. Yeah. Oh, I'll be at a university. Almost 2 years ago, I graduated with a bachelor's. And, I'm going back for a master's because it's impossible to find a job in my field unless you're evil, stupid, or a coward. Or just very, very, unless you're inoffensive and what's a less hard-handed way of putting it? Unless with my worldview of like, better things are possible. Unless you're like the only way to get a job in my field is if you're totally inoffensive and just willing to climb Dick Suck Mountain for a spot, working for a blathering idiot in Congress, you know. Do 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 do. Anyway. Darn it. Sorry. I forgot I switched the audio output. Ugh.
Republicans maintain control over the House ally, and in light of what's going on university campuses, the uptick of anti-Semitism around the world, I just can't be associated with a political party that has become part of the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish trend around the world and in the United States. So although I support many of the Democratic domestic policies, I will vote and work hard to make sure that the Republicans maintain control over the House, the Senate, and the presidency to avoid the United States from moving the way many European countries have moved, away from Israel, away from support for Western values, and in support for radical left-wing values. Look, if I could have registered as a Republican with a little asterisk saying I'm basically a foreign policy Republican, I'm still a domestic Democrat, I would do that. But
oh my God, that's crazy. I don't know. It's expected from him. But like, yeah, these are the only type of guys that are switching their policy or party affiliation over foreign policy issues. To whatever political person is operating. Like, you should not feel afraid of speaking out against Israel. Because, if you're a Democrat and you do this, Alan Dershowitz and people who think he's smart are the only types of folks he'll be offending. So
that choice is not available to me.
Yeah, and of the people who think he's smart, there aren't a lot of those people, and they're all, it's basically a non-constituency of people with a totally incoherent worldview that are basically just Western chauvinists, first in their politics, and progressive/liberal or whatever second. They're pro-empire, they're pro-war, they're pro-blowing up the Middle East for the rest of our lives if we can get away with it. Like, that's what they're about, Joe Kent is just the type of guy who's like fine with that, but he's like, oh, it's whatever. You know, fuck them kids. That's what he's thinking. But he's at least smart enough to recognize when we go too far for when America goes too far for its own good in terms of imperialist domination, and that's why he resigned.
Me. And so,
as far as I can
consistent
tell,
with my values, I want to quote Ronald Reagan. I haven't left the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has left me, and I believe is quickly leaving America. And that's why I am going to work against the Democratic Party, particularly at a time when anti-Semitism and anti-Israelism is increasing around.
Yeah, clearly, Reagan's trickle-down economics is. You know, it's probably a great idea pointing to the most, like Reagan and Thatcher are probably the first people you'd point to if you were looking to blame someone in particular for the, you know, decline of Western living standards and social cohesion. You know, because through their neoliberal policies of global free trade, and, you know, shipping manufacturing jobs overseas so capitalist business owners could make a tidier profit through cheaper labor costs. You know, you would point to Ronald Reagan, but thanks for quoting him. And also, it was Reagan who called, like, Dershowitz's #1 Israel defender would probably remember that it was Reagan who called off Israel from their Beirut invasion in, I forget what year. But he called them off from when they invaded Lebanon in the 90s and were doing Dahiya doctrine. Was it the first time they started the Dahiya doctrine? But Reagan called up the Israeli president, was like, yo, you have to stop. What you're doing is genocide. Paraphrasing there, of course, but whatever. Since he's talking about Reagan.
The world. You mentioned, by the way, that so many Americans are pro-Palestinian. Let's be very clear. Very few people really are pro-Palestinian. They're anti-Israel.
Yeah. Why can't you be both? That's the morally correct position. Anyway.
If they were pro-Palestinian, they would also be supporting the Kurds, the Uyghurs. They would be supporting.
Okay. No, not supporting the Uyghurs in what capacity? Or is it Uyghurs? Did he say it right more correctly than I said it? Yeah, you'd be supporting the Kurds, but, you know, it's like in what capacity that the Kurds should have self-determination, yeah. Sure, but it's not like you know, it's not like it's not like our politicians go around saying Syria or Jelani or Assad or the IRGC is the best and we must give them billions of dollars in aid and weapons. And same goes for China, even though the Uyghur situation is not even comparable to what Israel has done to Palestinians. Like it's not even in the slightest comparable to the Palestinian plight. but I guess we gotta support him anyway, even though our country is already hawkish against China in that same way that it's hawkish against most of the enemies of the Kurds. So
the Sudanese, they would be supporting the Ukrainians. You don't have that.
okay, the Sudanese, yeah, people do support the Sudanese, but Sudanese who are being genocided by the RSF, who are getting their weapons from the UAE. And one fun fact about this last month's events is that I forget what the acronym is, but the Sudanese Liberation Forces were actually starting to win because the RSF supply line has been getting cut off due to the Iranian strikes on the UAE and the rest of the Middle East. So, because the RSF is just a mercenary militia. So, they need a higher operating cost to function.
Demonstrations on university campuses in favor of these other oppressed groups only for the Palestinians, not because of who they are, but because of who allegedly oppresses them.
It's also more so like if you come at people, the organizers of the pro-Palestine, anti-Israel protests are aware of all these other issues of oppression for the most part. It's just their goal is to get people at least in the door and active, which is why those other issues may not come up, because if you just bonk people over the head with an overload of information on, oh my god, this and this and this and this and this and this is happening, instead of giving them a more clear and simple direction on how to at least do something and do something meaningful or effective. That's the goal of most of these protests. Raise awareness and get people mobilized to, one, educate themselves and act themselves, and then, give them the tools to do the same and help others follow.
Namely the nation state of the Jewish people. So it's another manifestation of the increasing worldwide anti-Semitism, and I'm going to fight against that.
Yeah.
But what many people say to me,
Alan Dershowitz is probably like one of the leading causes of worldwide anti-Semitism, just through his existence and his life choices. Like, it's like, he's almost Israel personified, just, going to try to make a legal argument for some of the most evil, like, Israel personified, just trying to make legal arguments and defenses when there is none for some of the most evil, brutal, and criminal acts in the history of man. But I guess that's what you should expect from Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer, or at least someone who was giving Epstein legal advice, right? But don't worry, he never took his underwear off at the island. Of course. Why do we even? Why does this guy even get a spot? Like, Piers just brings him on because it'll get clicks, but like this guy should be in jail. I mean, in a just world where we didn't have make lying, where we didn't give people a pathway to become professional liars like Alan Dershowitz is. Um, you know, be he'd be in jail anyway.
To me, I've spoken to many Jews and Israelis in the last few weeks, and the common theme is that they think the current Israeli government has moved from any form of mainstream government into an extremist government, driven by the agendas of people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, that Netanyahu has followed their lead now. And
dude, Israel's been extremist since its founding. It's just, Israelis have never had to deal with the consequences of their crimes being, known and widely reported in the Western world up until around like 2023, when October 7th popped off, and then everybody with a brain and, eyes and an internet connection just, started doing some, cursory research and then found all these books about, oh, wait, how the actual history of Israel is just ethnic cleansing and racial supremacy to create, as it expands land and land in a Liban, as it expands to take more Lebensraum from Palestinians and its neighbors, like in Lebanon and Syria. It didn't really have to deal with any of that. People were just mostly incurious or ignorant. And, never looked into it because a lot of people in America, especially, including myself, had Islamophobic attitudes and just accepted the simple narrative without really questioning it much or caring about its coherence. The simple narrative, of course, that, Israel, tiny nation, surrounded by terrorists, or whatever. Terror babies,
It's for that reason.
But now people have looked into it. There's tons of internet advocacy, real life advocacy protests, and like you're basically now just uncool. If you're in my generation, you're basically just not cool if you don't hate Israel, if you still like Israel in any capacity. Even for like normies. Even for normies, it's become sort of a litmus test as to who's cool and who's not. It feels like, you know? Because, like, I know I can talk to any, like, shithead coworker I've had and be like, yeah, fuck Israel. And they'll be like, hell yeah, brother. or, or something along those lines. Something along the lines of, yeah, Israel sucks. And they'll be like, yeah, you're right. Israel does suck. Like, you'll get that kind of attitude from someone who doesn't know lick about politics. And then because they've also been taught that Israel equals the Jews, they'll also be like, the Jews suck too, Fuck. I've been talking too long. Where were we at?
That there is so much rising sentiment against Israel as a country.
Okay,
As
what does Joe
Americans, we're
Kent
fair
say?
and
We spent
logical.
too long
83% of us favor requiring a
rambling
photo ID to
and
vote.
commenting
In fact,
on
most of the civilized
oh my god, what was that ad? That was a crazy ad. Most of the what?
Americans, especially the Americans who voted for Donald Trump, who represent the majority of Republicans, are sick and tired of having these discussions about foreign countries, whether it's Israel or anyone else. But Israel right now has a outsized influence on our foreign policy in the Middle East, which has catapulted us into this current conflict with Iran, which helped drive us into the tragic Iraq war. So look, I think Americans want our government to focus on our problems here in America. Drive around any American city, you're going to see poverty, despair. Those are the issues that people want to focus on. They don't want to focus on, who's running the Israeli cabinet or what the foreign policy preferences are of the Israeli government to drive us into the next series of conflicts. So I think that's why you're seeing so many people who came out and voted for President Trump when he campaigned on putting American interests first. I don't think we need to get rid of any kind of, relationship that we have with Israel. I don't think this is an Israeli versus Palestinian issue. I think what happens between the Israelis and the Palestinians is, quite frankly, their business. I think most Americans would agree. I think we just need to have normal relations with
No, well, most Americans would, yes. I agree with that because, that's just like a sentiment devoid of that sentiment devoid of the context that America, supplies Israel with 70% of its arms and gives Israel all the unlimited military aid, billions of dollars and all its bombs and planes, it's America's business too. So, yeah. But that sentiment devoid of the context that America is just as is basically as complicit as Israel in the Gaza genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians is fine. That sentiment's fine.
with Israel like we would with any other country. But right now, our relationship with Israel is so off balanced that you are seeing a lot of people putting this issue front and center because the war in Iran and the wars in the Middle East for the last 2 decades plus have consumed so much blood, so much treasure, and just so much attention from our leaders that many people, especially on the Republican side, are saying this is out of whack. We need our leaders to prioritize us. And I think that's what you're going to see in the next election cycle, not just the midterms, but especially as we have an open primary in 2028 for the presidency.
I don't disagree with that. Let me make one correction. Let me make one correction, please, just, and that is Israel was a.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Kent does not give a fuck about this issue at all. He just sees the issue as harmful for, I think he just sees the issue as harmful for, like, Christian nationalist or whatever kind of, whatever flavor of fascist politics he has, and he sees the issue, he sees Israel as disruptive towards his agenda in that regard. And that's why he's taking this, like, you know, both sidesy, non-committal approach to just saying, you know, we should just get out of Israel or whatever.
Opposed to the United States getting into the Iraq war. I know that. I was in the office of Prime Minister Sharon when he personally told me that he had spoken to President Bush and had urged him not to send American troops into Iraq. Israel was opposed to the Iraq war. It is in favor of trying to get regime.
Israel was opposed to the Iraq war, dude. Yeah. No, it wasn't. Benjamin Netanyahu, you know, he was celebrating the Iraq war and the prospect of going to war in Iraq. Like, there's that video of him. I don't have the time to go on a internet search dive, but there's a video of him saying, first we topple Saddam, and then we topple Iran, Assad in Syria, and then we can go after Iran. Because his ultimate goal is to make Israel the dominant regional power in the Middle East. And, you know, he understood that. He at least seemingly understood that to do that, the Israel lobby needed to build up kind of a death grip on the American political uh, process to make sure Israel would get all the aid it needs till that day comes. I just think it's so hard to tell whether they act well, it's clear their goal in Iran is to like destabilize it into a failed state or put in a puppet dictator like Jelani in Syria or reinstall the Shah somehow, as if there's any real momentum for that on the ground in Iran. There's not. But he's getting his wish, and he was a major part of the Iraq War. I don't know.
Change in Iran, because Iran is existentially threatening the existence of Israel. But when it comes to Iraq, that's very, very different. And Israel has been a great ally of the United States. And over the years, it's been one of the few people that the United States can count on for everything. And the major function that the United States has had recently is to stop Israel. It stopped Israel when it bombed the nuclear reactors. It told Israel it has to stop. Israel wanted to continue. When it had its ceasefire recently, it demanded that Israel stop its war in Lebanon. So the United States.
Yeah, okay. Wait, what?
Stopped Israel when it bombed the nuclear reactors. It told Israel it has to stop. Israel wanted to continue. When it had its ceasefire.
Well, America stops Israel from putting the world on the brink of economic/nuclear annihilation. Brilliant. Wow, what a great friend. It's the friend that it's America is the dog owner that catches the dog after the dog catches the car, I don't even know. The relationship is so inexplainable and unpredictable because it's run by such Nazi brained morons and geezers that they don't know what they're doing tomorrow. They barely remember what they did yesterday, and the only thing they do know is I'm talking about this Trump Netanyahu coalition that's assembled for the Iran war. These guys don't know what they're doing tomorrow. They don't know and the only thing they do know is they have power and guns, and they can point it at Iran. But otherwise, these guys don't know shit about seemingly don't know shit about how the world functions or anything. Because the Israeli intelligence, there's no way, Israel was so incompetent as to think, oh yeah, this Iran war definitely gonna work out in our favor. They're not gonna close the Strait of Hormuz. Was that their honest intelligence assessment, or are these motherfuckers trying to just, I don't even know. It's hard to even scope out the goals of anybody in these, you know, actual decision making circles regarding this war, because like like unless you just unless like the only explanation that makes sense is either is imperial hubris, or like these guys are a literal death cult that don't care if the world ends. You know, the people who are calling the shots here. Or if the global economy crashes or something like that, they think, hey, whatever, we're building the conditions for the Messiah to come back on a scorched earth. So that's, we'll just scorch it ourselves and make things up as we go along. And hopefully we don't get caught by someone who actually has the power to stand up to us. Because, I don't know, that's basically what's been happening the last month. It's insane. It's impossible. Like, none of the, geopolitical experts that I, like Mearsheimer or Jeffrey Sachs, or, let me think of another that's hyper credible, because they're, or Chris Hedges has been able to actually make a decent prediction, or scope out a decent vision of what might come, even like in the next week or the next day. It's like, look at this news cycle, dude. It's just like we're blowing up their mini boats that are laying down mines. Like, it might take up to 6 months to unmine the Strait of Hormuz. Israel's still blowing up Lebanese people, just at a like lower rate. And all it would take for this to stop is for all this senseless violence stop, is for Israel and the US to acknowledge, oh wait, maybe we're not doing things that are in our interest. Maybe we're just well, all it would take is for the US and Israel to back off, first off, because they're the aggressors in this conflict, and they hold all the power to make their own exit ramp, you know? But they don't, the US and Israel aren't run by any party that actually wants to negotiate things out sincerely or come to a mutual understanding. It's run by Nazis who think they're on a holy mission to preserve Western civilization, or whatever, take out terrorist hordes or something. It's insane. Um, but yeah, ugh, Iran is seizing ships. Still, the blockade is still in effect. If you look at the maps, it's clear that plenty of boats are still either getting denied access to cross. Is this the US Navy? Why are they wearing balaclavas? You need to protect their identities or something. I guess if they're worried that they'll get prosecuted for committing war crimes in the aftermath of this conflict, that would make sense. Or I don't know, is that tactical? I feel like wearing a balaclava in this situation where you're already on camera. Like, what is the tactical use of wearing a balaclava while, I don't know, doing this? Oh, that's Iran. Those are Iranian guys. Okay, never mind. Yeah, I guess because U.S. and Israeli spy gear might be able to recognize their face and then threaten their family or whatever. But I don't think Israel or the U.S. has that kind of surveillance capability over Iran, even though, like, it's clear Mossad has like sprouts or, you know, little roots inside Iran already. But or at least we saw that with the 12-day war last summer. And the way these these like American writers or reporters write about this stuff is also crazy. It's like, yeah, Trump may talk of regime and fighting, but Iran seems united by strategy born of war. I wonder why that is. Ugh. Maybe it's because they have a history of the U.S. interfering in their country. And they've remembered that history. So now that the U.S. is once again trying to interfere, topple their country, you know. Only people who, like, have no, I don't know. I've made this video way too long already, so I don't know. If you enjoyed me rambling about this stuff,
Fire recently, it urged,
does
demanded
this remain
that Israel.
respectful?
Iran would attack American interests, so they got in first. Then
That's
he
a question of
backtracked
timing.
when there was
That's
a
a question
furore.
of timing.
Yeah, but it's also
No,
a
I
question
agree
of
with you
who
that-
Damn it. Are there any pop-off moments I don't care about? Give me something to laugh at, please. Anyway, we'll end it with this,
Hello.
Do you want to play with me?
not sure what
You want me to help you with your groceries?
This
region
journey
these
with
people
childhood
are from,
cancer
but I've seen
comes at you in
They make interesting music. Guess they're Ruskies, right? Or something. should end the YouTube video. Like and subscribe, YouTubers. Whoopsie. Very profesh of me. Very professionally saying profesh. Yeah. I don't know. If somebody can make heads or tails of this, of what's actually going on behind closed doors in the White House and with Israel and this Iran stuff. Well, I know, like, at least the negotiations, they're not real negotiations. We're just sending Israel goons like Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff to, try to bribe or threaten the Iranian negotiators into, making concessions. And JD Vance is just there to, I don't know. How do the Iranian negotiators even go into these negotiations with any ounce of like charitability towards whatever Kushner, Vance, or Witkoff would have to say? Because like all three of those people are just like dipshit, amoral shit, amoral shitbags who were only elevated to their position of power because of their personal connections and their, willingness to commit criminal acts and lie, basically, at the behest of billionaires. Like, that's the only reason those people are in the position they're at. And Steve Witkoff being like I don't know, some kind of real estate guy. Basically a less famous version of Trump before he got whatever, Like, all these guys are just fucking dirtbags, and, it's just hard to imagine Iran would send, like, there's any good faith negotiations going on behind closed doors. And Trump is just getting fed a whole lot of misinformation, I think, by sycophants who are trying to maintain their position and stay in Trump's good graces by feeding him good news that makes him feel good because he's a literal child who will blame you for bringing him bad news, who will, like, he's a literal child who will shoot the messenger or attempt to do that if they bring him bad news, like, and so it's just so fucked. Like, how do you make heads or tails of this? Even the longtime experts and, analysts in this field are, having trouble. It's like, how am I supposed to try to give comments to any of this stuff other than saying, like, we live in the mirror world. We live in the worst timeline where everyone is just stupid as fuck and does not give enough of a shit to look into anything they talk about, for the most part. And, we're a country run by some of the most, corrupt shithieds to ever walk the earth. And they probably don't even realize how corrupt and immoral they are, some of these guys. Anyway, that's enough rambling from me.
Statesman. More to cranes that never...
YouTubers, like and subscribe. Good talk, y'all. Bye-bye.